Most people believe that reheating leftovers is a neutral act. You cook something yesterday, you put it in the refrigerator, you warm it up today. Nothing changed except the temperature. That assumption is wrong. And for some foods, it is dangerously wrong. When certain foods are heated, cooled, and reheated, a cycle that millions of people repeat every single day without a second thought, specific chemical reactions occur inside those foods that produce compounds directly linked to increased cardiovascular inflammation, cellular damage, and in some cases, compounds classified as probable human carcinogens. I am a cardiovascular surgeon. Cancer is not my primary specialty, but arterial inflammation is, and the overlap between the foods that produce dangerous compounds when reheated and the foods that drive the chronic inflammation I see in every patient I operate on is not coincidental. My name is Dr. Emmanuel Osei. I'm a cardiovascular surgeon with over 2 decades in the operating room, and today I'm going to show you 5 foods you should never reheat, and exactly why the chemistry of reheating them is damaging your body. Stay with me. Before the list, I need to explain the 2 chemical mechanisms that make reheating dangerous for specific foods. The first is lipid oxidation. When certain fats, particularly polyunsaturated fatty acids, are heated, they oxidize. They react with oxygen and break down into compounds called aldehydes and lipid peroxides. These compounds are toxic to cell membranes, to the endothelial lining of blood vessels, and at sufficient concentrations are directly genotoxic, meaning they can damage DNA. Reheating accelerates this oxidation. A fat that was moderately oxidized after initial cooking becomes significantly more oxidized after a second heating cycle. The damage compounds. The second mechanism is protein structural change. When certain proteins are cooked, they undergo denaturation. Their structure changes. When those same proteins are reheated, particularly at high temperatures, they can form advanced glycation end products, AGEs, especially when sugars are present. AGEs bind to receptors on blood vessel walls and trigger inflammatory cascades. They are directly implicated in the arterial stiffening that characterizes cardiovascular aging after 60. With those 2 mechanisms in mind, here are the 5 foods. The first food is reheated cooking oils, and anything cooked in them a second time. This is the most important one on the list, and the one most people never consider. When vegetable oils, canola, sunflower, soybean, corn, are heated to cooking temperature, they begin to oxidize and produce aldehydes. When those same oils, or food cooked in them, are reheated, the aldehyde concentration increases dramatically. Aldehydes include compounds like acrolein, 4-hydroxynonenal, and malandialdehyde, all of which have established toxicity to arterial endothelial cells and have been detected in the arterial plaques of cardiovascular patients. Restaurant food is particularly relevant here. Many commercial kitchens reuse frying oil multiple times. The oil that fried your food has been through multiple heating cycles. The aldehyde concentration in that oil is far higher than in freshly heated oil. At home, the risk comes from reheating foods that were previously cooked in vegetable oil, fried rice, stir-fried vegetables, breaded items. The oil residue in the food undergoes further oxidation with each reheating. What to do? Never reheat food that was cooked in vegetable oil at high temperature. If you must reheat fried or stir-fried food, do so at the lowest effective temperature and do not reheat more than once. Better, cook with olive oil or butter and avoid multiple heating cycles entirely. The second food is reheated rice. This one has a specific and well-documented mechanism that is separate from lipid oxidation. Cooked rice, when left at room temperature or improperly cooled, supports the growth of Bacillus cereus, a bacterium that produces heat-resistant toxins. Unlike most food pathogens, these toxins are not destroyed by reheating. The bacteria are killed by heat. The toxins they produced before reheating survive. Consumption of rice with elevated Bacillus cereus toxin causes gastrointestinal illness. But the more relevant issue for people over 60 is the inflammatory burden of repeated low-level exposure to food-associated toxins. The gut inflammatory response to these toxins creates systemic inflammation that contributes to the same arterial inflammatory environment I see in cardiovascular patients. But rice has a second reheating problem specific to cardiovascular health. Reheated rice, particularly white rice, has a significantly higher glycemic impact than freshly cooked rice. When starch is cooked, cooled, and reheated, a portion converts to resistant starch, which is metabolically beneficial. But when that same rice is rapidly reheated at high temperature, that resistant starch converts back to a rapidly digestible form. The blood sugar spike from reheated rice can be substantially higher than from freshly cooked rice. For people over 60 managing blood pressure and cardiovascular risk, repeated post-meal glucose spikes accelerate the arterial damage that is already occurring. What to do? Cook rice fresh when possible. If you must store it, cool it rapidly, within 1 hour, and refrigerate immediately. Reheat thoroughly to above 74 degrees Celsius and consume immediately. Never leave cooked rice at room temperature for more than 2 hours. Never reheat rice more than once. The third food is reheated chicken. Chicken contains high concentrations of protein. When chicken is cooked, those proteins denature. When it is reheated, particularly at high temperatures, the protein structure continues to change in ways that affect digestibility and produce compounds associated with inflammation. The more specific concern is heterocyclic amines, HCAs. These compounds form when muscle proteins are exposed to high heat, particularly dry heat. They are classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as probable human carcinogens. HCA formation increases with each heating cycle. A chicken breast that was grilled once has a certain HCA load. The same breast reheated in a pan or microwave at high temperature has a higher one. The cardiovascular relevance is through inflammation. HCAs trigger inflammatory responses in gut tissue that produce systemic inflammatory mediators, the same mediators that contribute to arterial plaque instability. What to do? Reheat chicken at the lowest temperature that achieves food safety, above 74 degrees Celsius, rather than at high heat. Avoid reheating in a dry pan or under a grill. Use a covered pot with a small amount of moisture or a low-power microwave cycle. Never reheat chicken more than once. The fourth food is reheated spinach and other nitrate-rich vegetables. This one surprises people because spinach is universally considered a heart-healthy food, and fresh spinach is. The problem is specific to reheating. Spinach, beets, celery, and several other vegetables are high in naturally occurring nitrates. When these vegetables are cooked, bacteria present in the food begin converting nitrates to nitrites. Refrigeration slows this conversion. Reheating accelerates it. At elevated temperatures, nitrites can combine with proteins in the food to form nitrosamines, compounds that are well-established carcinogens in animal models and classified as probable human carcinogens by IARC. The nitrosamine formation is time and temperature dependent. A brief reheating at moderate temperature produces less than prolonged reheating at high temperature. But the principle holds. The food that was healthy when first cooked becomes progressively less healthy with each reheating cycle. What to do? Cook spinach and nitrate-rich vegetables fresh. If you must reheat them, do so once, briefly, at low temperature. Never leave cooked spinach or beets at room temperature for extended periods. Refrigerate immediately after cooking and consume within 24 hours. The fifth food is reheated eggs. Eggs cooked at high heat, scrambled hard, fried until fully solid, hard-boiled and then reheated, undergo significant protein oxidation. The cholesterol in egg yolks, which in its native state is largely benign, oxidizes when exposed to high heat and becomes oxysterols, oxidized cholesterol compounds. Oxysterols are directly cytotoxic to arterial endothelial cells. They accumulate in atherosclerotic plaques. Multiple studies have identified elevated oxysterol levels in the arterial tissue of cardiovascular patients. The oxidized cholesterol produced by overcooking and reheating eggs is fundamentally different in its arterial effects from the native cholesterol in a properly cooked fresh egg. This is one reason why the research on dietary cholesterol and cardiovascular risk is more nuanced than simple cholesterol counting suggests. What to do? Cook eggs fresh. If you must prepare eggs in advance, store them undercooked and finish cooking when reheating, rather than fully cooking and reheating. Avoid high-temperature reheating of eggs entirely. Low and slow is always better for egg protein and cholesterol integrity. I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Michael, 67 years old. His diet appeared reasonable. He exercised regularly. His cholesterol was well managed on a statin, but his HSCRP, his inflammation marker, was persistently elevated at 3.8, despite optimized medication and what appeared to be a decent lifestyle. I asked him to describe his weekly eating in detail. The pattern that emerged was consistent. He cooked large batches on Sundays: rice, chicken, stir-fried vegetables and vegetable oil. He reheated portions throughout the week in the microwave at full power. The same food, reheated daily. A consistent source of oxidized lipids, elevated HCAs, and nitrosamine exposure, every single day, for years. We changed two things. He switched to cooking oil that did not degrade with heat, and he stopped batch cooking and reheating, cooking smaller, fresh portions instead. 8 weeks later, his HSCRP had dropped to 1.4. Same medications, same exercise, different food chemistry. He told me, "I thought meal prepping was a healthy habit. Nobody ever mentioned what happens to the food the third time you heat it. Nobody mentioned it because the conversation about food in most medical appointments does not go beyond general categories. It does not reach food chemistry and reheating cycles. You now know what most patients learn too late. Let me bring this together. 1. Reheated cooking oils and foods cooked in them. Aldehyde formation increases with each heating cycle and is directly toxic to arterial walls. Never reheat food previously cooked in vegetable oil at high temperature. 2. Reheated rice. Bacillus cereus toxins survive reheating, and the glycemic impact of improperly reheated rice spikes blood sugar in ways that accelerate arterial damage. Cool rapidly. Refrigerate immediately. Reheat once only. 3. Reheated chicken. HCA formation increases with each heating cycle. Reheat at low temperature with moisture, never more than once. 4. Reheated spinach and nitrate-rich vegetables. Nitrosamine formation accelerates with reheating. Cook fresh, reheat once briefly at low temperature. 5. Reheated eggs. Oxysterol formation from high-temperature egg protein oxidation damages arterial endothelial cells. Cook fresh, low temperature, never reheat. The pattern across all 5 is the same. The first cooking cycle is largely unavoidable. The second heating cycle is where the damage accelerates. Eliminate the second cycle wherever possible. I want to hear from you. Which of these 5 foods are you regularly reheating and had no idea of the chemistry involved? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If this video gave you something important, share it. Not for me, for someone in your life who meal preps every Sunday and reheats all week believing they are making a healthy choice. Send this to them. Everything I've shared today is based on current published research and my clinical experience as a cardiovascular surgeon. This is general information, not personal medical advice. Always consult your own doctor before making any decisions about your health or diet. Take care of your heart. It has been working for you every single minute of your life without ever asking for anything in return.